guys, this is Mrs. Bradley, and this is your recording for today. I actually just recorded this entire thing, and something happened. I don't know what happened. So I just want to go through it really quickly. Please remember at any point you can pause this if you're not quite understanding exactly how this needs to go. So I am going to go over all of these and we will also have a review on Monday before we take our test. And we will also have a live help session if you have any specific questions that we want to go over. So we are going to take a look at this really quickly. I am going to draw my river, and I notice here that I have 3.4 m and a negative 2.4 m, and they are on the same side of that river, so I just can combine them. So I have 3.4 m minus 2.4 m, and that is going to give me 1 m, or just m. So I'm going to write that here, and I'm going to write everything else down. And at any point, if you think I'm going too fast, you can pause this video and go back. So the object of the game is to get m all by itself here. So I'm adding 10. I want to subtract 10 to get it all by itself. I'm going to keep my decimal places there by themselves, and I have m equals, I have a negative 8.2 and a negative 10. I'm going to same signs, add and keep. So I'm going to keep my negative. I'm going to add that to 18, and my answer is negative 18.2. So you can choose there A, B, C, or D. So looking at number 4, what is the value of y? This is 2/3 y equals negative 18. So I don't want you to look at that as fraction as much as I want you to look at it as how can I get rid of everything so I get y all by itself. So how can I get rid of the 3? Well, it's on the bottom. I can multiply by 3 on the top to cancel it out. How can I get rid of that 2? I can divide by 2 on the bottom to cancel that out. And I know that that is multiplying by a reciprocal. So I am going to do the same thing on the other side of the river so that I keep everything equal. So I multiplied by 3 over 2, so I'm going to multiply by 3 over 2 here. That is going to give me y equals negative 18 times 3 over 2. I can simplify here by saying 2 will go into 18 9 times. That is a negative 9, so I have negative 9 times 3, and negative times a positive equals a negative, and that's going to give me negative 27. Okay, I can plug that back into the problem for y and say negative 27 times 2/3. If you were to simplify that, you would divide by 3 to get 9, and negative 9 times 2 does give you negative 18. So we are going to move right along, and we have it choose the correct answer here. We have Melanie has three of her relatives go out to dinner for a special occasion. The bill comes to $49.60, and they decide to divide the bill evenly. How much does each person pay? So we're going to look at this here. We have 3 relatives plus Melanie. So we are going to say there are 4 people. We want to know how much each person paid individually, and there's a total of $49.60. So here is my equation. I am multiplying by 4, so in order to get x all by itself, I want to divide by 4 and say that x is going to equal $12 in my handy dandy calculator, $12.40. Okay, so here on number 8, it says, what is the value for r? But I notice I have a distributor here on the outside that's going to fly into the city and distribute its multiplication powers into the city. It doesn't matter that it's a decimal. It's still a distributor that can fly into the city using its multiplication. So we're going to say 0.2 times 6r is going to give us 1.2r. And I'm going to use my subtraction sign, and I have 0.2 times 5 is going to give me 1.0, or just 1, and that's going to equal 8. So what I want to do is get r all by itself. I learned to add and subtract first, so I'm going to undo addition and subtraction first. I am subtracting 1 here, so I'm going to add 1 to both sides to keep it equal. That's going to give me 9, and I have 1.2r here. I am multiplying by 1.2, so I'm going to divide by 1.2 to get r all by itself. And when I do that, that is going to give me 7.5. And again, you can always check this by substituting 7.5 back into the equation for r, and that should give you something that checks out to 8. Oh, that is a terrible check sign. Sorry about that. All right, moving right along on number 10. Again, these are questions out of your book. I did all the evens since you don't have the answers to the evens in the back of the book. So I wanted to make sure you had this information so you could go and do the odd ones and then check your answers. So taking a look at this one, I definitely want to have a river for this one. And I want to look at this as I have two separate expressions on either side of the equation, but I notice I have a distributor here that I must distribute out before I find out what I have. So I'm going to take my 2 as my distributor. I'm going to fly it into the city, distributing its multiplication powers into the city. This is going to keep my equal sign here. I'm going to do nothing over here for now, and I have 4b minus 10 here. This is going to give me 2 times 2b is 4b. And 2 times 5 gives me 10, and I'm going to keep my subtraction sign here. And if you were in that lesson that day, you will know that this is similar to the Olsen twins, and they are twins on both sides of the equation. You can stop here. You do not have to go any further. This is called identity, and that's why we talked about the Olsen twins. This is called identity. And what that means is you can put anything into this equation. You can put 4,357 into this equation, or you can put 0 into this equation. And it will always simplify out to either being equal or being 0. So 0 equals 0. So anything can go into this equation and it will equal out, which means that it is infinite number of solutions. You can put any number into that equation and you will still simplify it all the way down to 0. One solution, let me just go over some of these others. One solution is what we've been dealing with here. And I cannot go backwards. I can only go forwards. Okay, so that last answer we just had, that would be considered one solution because we had r equals 7.5. It equals one value. So it equals one solution. If it has 0 solutions, it means that the variables cancel out and the numbers do not equal each other, which means like 10 equals negative 18. Those do not equal out. They are not equal to each other. So there is 0 solutions or contradictory. Okay. So go back through that lesson if you don't quite understand that one. That was 9 strange solutions. Okay, so number 12 just tells us that we want to get y all by itself here. And just because it's negative y doesn't really matter at this point, and I'll show you a little trick in just a minute. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of this 9 first, and I want to move it over to this side of the river to combine it with that 24. It is a positive 9. I am going to make it negative to subtract on both sides of the equation. 24 minus 9 is going to give me 15. And I am left with negative y. Now here's the trick. If you look at this, this is understood to be negative 1y. You could divide by negative 1 to get y all by itself. But you can also look at this as, what is the opposite of negative y? Well, the opposite of negative y is y. And what is the opposite of 15? It is negative 15. So my answer is just the opposite of what negative y would be. So when you plug this back into this equation to check, you can look at this and say minus what y is. So that would be minus a negative equals positive, and we would add 9 plus 15 does give us 24, and it checks out. You can also look at this as negative y, and we said that negative y was positive 15. We add it to 9, and it gets 24. So either way, that works. Again, please press pause at any point if I'm going too fast. Here I'm going to go ahead and draw my river. I do notice that I have a distributor over here, so I'm going to take my distributor and fly it into the city just like always. Distribute its powers using multiplication, so we have 4 times 3x gives us our 12x, and we have 4 times 5 gives us our 20. And we keep our sign here. We do not multiply the 4 times this 2x because it is not within those parentheses, okay? So we do not multiply anything, or the distributor, by anything that's not inside the parentheses. So I'm just going to leave my plus 2x here, leave my equal sign right there on the river, and I am going to say that on this side of the river, I do have my 12x and my 2x. I can just go ahead and add those because they're on the same side of the river. So I have 14x minus 20, and that's going to equal 8. So now I learned to add and subtract first, so I'm going to undo addition and subtraction first. I am subtracting 20, so I want to add 20 to get rid of it on both sides of the equation. Whoops, just 20. It's going to equal 28. So I'm left with 14x here, and that is going to equal 28. I am multiplying by 14. I'm going to divide by 14 to get x all by itself, and that's going to give me 28 divided by 14 gives me 2. In my super smart brain, I can plug the 2 in for x here and here, and I can solve to say 3 times 2 is 6, minus 5 is 1, times 4 is 4. I can plug it in again here, so 2 times 2 is 4, so I have 4 plus 4 is 8, and it does check out. Okay, so number 22, I am going to draw my river, and I'm going to say I have a 4y and an 8y that I want to combine, but they're on opposite sides of the river, so I want to make sure that I undo this side to bring it over to this side. So it is a positive 4y. I'm going to make it a negative 4y and subtract. 8y minus 4y leaves me with 4y here. I'm going to bring down my 21, keep my equal sign on the river, and bring down my negative 3. I now want to get y by itself, so I'm looking at the side of the river with the y, and I'm adding 21, so I'm going to subtract 21 to both sides. That is going to leave me with 4y. And that equals a negative 3 and a negative 21. Those are same signs, add and keep. So I'm going to keep that negative, add them to get 24. I want y all by itself. I'm multiplying by 4, so I'm going to divide by 4. That cancels, so I'm left with y on this side, and this leaves me with negative 6. Again, you can plug it in for y to check out and make sure that is correct. Okay, last but not least, here's number 26. I have a painter that bought 20 paintbrushes. Some were 2-inch paintbrushes that cost $2.39 each, and some were 4-inch paintbrushes that cost $3.57 each. The total was $65.50. So A tells us that if P represents the 2-inch paintbrushes, and I'm going to cross that out because the 2 has no value, we're not looking at what the 2-inch paintbrushes are. We're just going to say that is P. And then it's saying, well, what expression would represent the 4-inch paintbrushes? And we're just going to call these our big paintbrushes, okay? And I'm actually just going to talk about that in just a minute. So P is going to equal our small paintbrushes. And if we have 20 paintbrushes all together, our big paintbrushes are going to equal 20 minus the small ones. Okay? So we're going to take our 20 paintbrushes, we're going to take away the small ones, and that's going to tell us how many are left, how many big paintbrushes are left. Okay? Because it tells us that P is representing the small ones. So then we're going to write an equation to use the total number of paintbrushes. Well, we know the total is $65.50. And we are going to say that the small paintbrushes cost $2.39 each, and those are for the small ones. And we're going to add those to the big paintbrushes to get our total. And those are $3.50. And we said that our big paintbrushes are represented by this expression, 20 minus P. Okay? So we now have a distributive property problem here. So we're going to fly this 3.57 into the city and distribute its multiplication powers using multiplication. So 3.57 times 20 gives us 71.4 or 7140. And then that 3.75 times P is going to be 3.75 P. I'm going to write everything else down. So I'm just going to have my 65.50 here. And then I'm going to say $2.39 here is added. Now, looking at this, I can change my ink really quick and say this tells me I've got a P over here and a P over here. I'm going to draw my river here. And this tells me that I can just combine these because they're on the same side of the same side of the river. So I'm looking at this, and I'm going to have to do this on a piece of paper because I don't have my handy dandy calculator or access to it while I have this up. So I have 2.39p and negative 3.57p. Those are different signs, so I'm going to subtract and keep the sign of the larger. So I'm going to subtract 3.57 minus 2.39, and it's going to be negative. And that is going to give me 1.18, and it's negative. And I'm talking about my p here. Plus 71.4. Going to leave my equal sign here, and this equals 75 or 6550, sorry. So I'm adding here. I want to subtract to undo. So these are different signs. I'm going to subtract and keep the sign of the larger, which is negative. And again, I'm going to have to do this here. I'm not good at doing things in my head, so I have to do it here. Hang on just a second. 590, and that's negative. And I have negative 1.18p over here. I want to get p all by itself. I am multiplying by a negative 1.18, so I'm going to divide by a negative 1.18, and that is going to give me p equals 5. So I have 5 small paintbrushes, and then it tells me that the big paintbrushes are the 20 paintbrushes minus the small ones. So I'm going to take 20 minus 5, and that's going to give me 15 big paintbrushes. Okay? And that's what it's asking. So we wrote an equation and we solved it. Okay, that's all for today. That's a review. Like I said, if these are giving you any trouble or you have any questions with the review lesson in the actual lesson today, there's no assessment, but there are some review questions that you can go through. If you're having any questions on those, we can review on Monday before the test. And then I will also open an extended live help on Monday to help with any of those unit assessment questions. You guys have a great weekend, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.